In a move that sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace, Prince William has just confirmed what insiders have long whispered. Princess Charlotte, not anyone from Camilla's bloodline, will inherit the Queen Mother's closely guarded legacy. What triggered this generational leap? And why now? The announcement isn't just symbolic, it's a dagger into the heart of royal politics and a crown passed in defiance. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The confirmation didn't come via press release or formal declaration, it came during a highly confidential yet leaked internal council discussion, where William reportedly stated, "Charlotte embodies everything my great-grandmother stood for." This wasn't just a statement of admiration, it was a declaration of succession. What the Queen Mother left behind wasn't a simple estate or heirloom. It was an intangible but powerful royal identity, passed down to one she believed would carry herself with quiet strength and unapologetic grace. And now, for the first time, it's clear who she intended it for. Behind palace walls, murmurs grew into roars as the revelation made its way through the royal inner circles. William's choice wasn't made in a vacuum, it was a calculated move that appears to sidestep Charles entirely and effectively extinguish any expectation from Camilla's descendants to carry this legacy forward. At the heart of this storm lies the symbolism Charlotte now represents. Young, composed, and raised under the watchful eyes of Catherine, she has reportedly been groomed not in title, but in temperament for something far greater than expected. She's not just the granddaughter of a future king. She's now the beacon of an older royal order, one steeped in the Queen Mother's values. The contrast to Camilla's lineage is stark, and insiders suggest it was no accident that this timing aligned with a recent review of succession-based legacy entitlements. Camilla's family, long seen as peripheral but quietly gaining ground, had assumed a growing stake in royal tradition. That illusion was shattered when this confirmation emerged. Tensions between William and Camilla, which had simmered behind closed doors, are now said to have boiled over. One courtier described the mood in Clarence's house as icy and fractured, hinting at a confrontation that left Camilla visibly shaken. In her view, this was more than a symbolic rejection, it was a public sidelining of her legacy. This wasn't a random development, it was the result of weeks of whispered strategy meetings, back-channel communications, and royal advisors poring over documents said to have been sealed by the Queen Mother herself. According to one palace source, a private registry was unlocked that mentioned a young female descendant of grace, humility, and steel, which William interpreted with unwavering clarity as his daughter. But this wasn't a decision made overnight. Behind the scenes, a decades-old battle was quietly brewing, one that would pit tradition against ambition and bloodline against favor. Long before she passed, the Queen Mother is said to have penned a hidden clause in her will, one never made public, specifying exactly who should carry forward her personal legacy. Now that document has allegedly resurfaced, and the names within are changing everything. According to whispers among senior courtiers, the Queen Mother left more than pearls, portraits, or properties. She left behind a legacy carved not in gold, but in principle, one she fiercely protected during her life, and it seems long after her death. Sources reveal that in the final years of her life, she summoned both Charles and Princess Anne to a private audience, where she outlined a vision for the future of the monarchy, one where symbolism would matter as much as blood, and where grace, dignity, and restraint would triumph over politics, image, and ambition. But that meeting, now referred to among staff as the quiet instruction, was never publicly acknowledged, and for decades its implications were buried in the vaults of royal memory until now. What made this so dangerous wasn't just what the Queen Mother said, but what she didn't say in public. She understood the weight of words within palace corridors. By not openly naming her chosen spiritual heir, she forced the family to reveal themselves through their actions, not their proximity to power. That omission opened the door to manipulation, and it was through this opening that certain figures, desperate to secure their own family's future, attempted to step in. But one woman stood as the Queen Mother's silent enforcer, even in absence: Catherine. It is now believed that Catherine was quietly entrusted with preserving the Queen Mother's intentions, not through a legal document, but through a sacred promise passed from one woman to another, and that promise would become her hidden weapon. Allegations have now surfaced that following the Queen Mother's death, certain senior palace officials, under pressure from Camilla's allies, sought to suppress the clause, labeling it non-binding and sentimental. But insiders insist the clause was never about legal ownership or ceremonial entitlement. It was about continuity. The Queen Mother's legacy was always about moral posture, unshakable discretion, and upholding the crown in silence, not spectacle. And she saw in Charlotte the spark of that same steel spine, not because of title, but because of character. Charlotte, it seems, became a symbolic heir before she ever understood the weight of it. Raised under the guidance of Catherine and watched closely by Princess Anne, she became a living reminder of what the Queen Mother had envisioned. Her ability to hold poise under pressure, her quiet resilience in public appearances, and her uncanny maturity all began to echo the traits that once defined the Queen Mother's reign behind the scenes. A royal aide described her as the embodiment of an old soul in a new age, a phrase now circulating within the palace with reverent awe. Then came the revelation that cracked the legacy wide open. A royal archivist, speaking under the condition of anonymity, claimed that a sealed envelope, labelled with the Queen Mother's initials, had been stored beneath layers of restricted material in the Windsor archives. Inside, a handwritten note stating, "To the one who carries herself not with pride, but with purpose. She shall hold the mantle, no name, no date." But those closest to the family believed the meaning was unmistakable. William interpreted it as prophecy. Catherine saw it as confirmation. And for Camilla's circle, it was a threat. Now, with the clause allegedly exposed, and William's public stance reinforcing it, the Queen Mother's hidden vision is no longer speculation, it's strategy. And for Charlotte, the path ahead is no longer that of a princess alone. She has become the living legacy of a royal matriarch whose will reached far beyond her time, while the Queen Mother's intentions were veiled in secrecy. Charlotte's path to inheritance was anything but smooth. Because standing in her way was a woman determined to rewrite royal succession. Camilla was never one to accept defeat quietly. Sources say she launched a covert plan to ensure her grandchildren inherited what she believes is rightfully hers. But when her schemes collided with the Queen Mother's preserved wishes, palace insiders witnessed a civil war unlike any before. Behind closed doors, Camilla began a calculated operation, quiet in its delivery, bold in its intent. While outwardly presenting unity within the royal fold, she was quietly maneuvering her grandchildren into key ceremonial roles, subtly influencing schedules, public appearances, and internal engagements. At first, no one questioned the gradual rise in visibility of her bloodline until patterns began emerging that hinted at something far more deliberate. Royal observers noticed invitations extended to her family for events traditionally reserved for direct heirs. There were whispers of revised protocol drafts, adjusted seating arrangements, and even informal efforts to link her lineage with the Queen Mother's legacy through curated public tributes and staged dedications. But the true power move came during Charles's reign. Camilla reportedly began lobbying courtiers and legal advisors to reconsider the legacy distribution protocols, arguing that the monarchy must modernize and embrace blended lines of heritage. She presented her case under the guise of unity, but insiders confirm it was an attempt to rewrite a royal hierarchy that had never truly accepted her. At the heart of this maneuver was one aim: secure the Queen Mother's symbolic legacy, or at the very least, neutralize Charlotte's claim to it. Yet Camilla underestimated one thing: how deeply William had internalized his grandmother's vision. Tensions began to build between William and Camilla behind palace walls. While Charles attempted to act as mediator, it quickly became clear that this was more than a disagreement, it was a war of philosophies. William, rooted in legacy and tradition, saw the Queen Mother's will as sacred. Camilla, driven by fear of irrelevance, viewed it as outdated. Clashes over future planning turned heated. One insider claimed a planning session for a Queen Mother memorial was abruptly cancelled after Camilla insisted her grandchildren be featured in a visual timeline. The backlash from senior royals was immediate and sharp. Princess Anne reportedly refused to attend the revised proposal meeting, calling it an insult to Her Majesty's memory. But the confrontation didn't stay within the palace. As whispers leaked to the press, public opinion began to sour. The people, already protective of Charlotte, viewed Camilla's maneuvers as calculated and divisive. Polls shifted, headlines questioned her motivations, and the public began to rally not just around Charlotte, but around the deeper question of what legacy truly means in a fractured royal family. Even so, Camilla didn't retreat. Her persistence painted a picture of a woman willing to risk reputation to secure relevance. But the more she pushed, the more the palace pushed back. Her subtle encroachments became headlines, her influence became scrutiny, and what was once a quiet attempt to reposition her family became a national spectacle of royal division. Yet as Camilla pressed forward, the real power play came not from a queen but from a mother determined to uphold legacy through her daughter. In a moment of quiet defiance, Catherine is said to have looked Camilla in the eye and declared, "Charlotte was chosen, not born into this." This wasn't just maternal pride, it was a strategic move to protect a legacy rooted in grace, duty, and strength. For years, Catherine remained the picture of restraint, but behind her measured public image was a woman who had studied the Queen Mother's every move, not just as a royal figure, but as a woman who wielded power without ever needing to declare it. Those close to Catherine say she became quietly obsessed with understanding what made the Queen Mother's legacy endure through war, scandal, and shifting tides of history. She saw something timeless in the old matriarch's values: dignity, silence, in the face of provocation, and the ability to influence without dominating. And as Charlotte grew, Catherine didn't simply raise a princess. She shaped an heir to something far more enduring: reverence. From an early age, Charlotte was surrounded by a different kind of royal tutelage, one not dictated by position, but by behavior. Catherine shielded her daughter from the internal chaos that seemed to plague other branches of the family, insisting on simplicity, discipline, and humility. While other children of privilege became symbols of entitlement, Charlotte began embodying the quiet discipline of a future matriarch. It wasn't coincidence. It was design. Insiders now believe Catherine deliberately positioned her daughter to mirror the Queen Mother's image not in looks, but in moral stature. The way Charlotte curtsied without prompting, the calm way she addressed strangers, the way she instinctively stepped back to let her older brother shine, even when cameras were rolling. These weren't rehearsals, they were reflections, but behind the scenes, Catherine was far from passive. When discussions erupted over legacy distribution, she took a rare and deliberate stance, pushing back against not just Camilla's ambitions, but also Charles's attempts at royal diplomacy. Reports say there was a pivotal moment when Catherine, composed but unwavering, stood in front of both and asked one question that silenced the room: when did legacy become inheritance and not character? It was the kind of remark that didn't need explanation, and it marked a turning point. From that moment on, Catherine wasn't just a duchess or consort. She was a strategist playing for generational impact. The rift between her and Camilla deepened. What had once been a cold tolerance turned into something more volatile. One source described an icy exchange between the two where Camilla, after learning of Charlotte's growing public support, accused Catherine of orchestrating a legacy coup. Catherine's response: silence. And yet, the silence itself spoke volumes. Publicly, the tide was turning, as footage of Charlotte's poise at state events circulated and comparisons to the Queen Mother grew louder. Catherine's role became undeniable. The people saw in her a maternal figure not just protective of her child, but of the monarchy's soul. What shocked many, however, was how naturally Charlotte seemed to step into this rising role, without fanfare, without resistance. She carried herself with a kind of quiet confidence that felt almost inherited from another era. Catherine's belief was clear. Legacy could not be demanded, it had to be earned, lived, and worn like a second skin. And Charlotte, whether she realized it or not, had become its living vessel. But one royal voice carried more weight than any other, and when he finally broke his silence, the monarchy itself shifted. For years, Prince William stayed silent. But palace insiders now reveal he made a secret promise to his grandmother, the Queen Mother, that her values would never be diluted. With this announcement, he has shattered royal expectations and honored a vow sealed in childhood. Those who knew William as a boy speak of a deep and quiet bond between him and the Queen Mother. While the public saw only formal waves and polite gestures, behind palace doors there existed a thread of affection woven through shared moments of trust. It was during these private encounters that the Queen Mother, already in the twilight of her life, is said to have planted seeds that would one day take root in William's heart. She spoke of legacy, not as titles or treasures, but as responsibility of carrying the soul of the monarchy with dignity, restraint, and moral clarity. And in those fleeting moments of intimacy, a vow was born silent, sacred, and unshakable. He promised her before she passed that he would one day ensure her spirit would not be buried with her body, but reborn in the future. That promise became William's hidden compass as he navigated the turbulent waters of royal life. The years that followed were not kind. He watched the institution fracture, watched loyalty blur, watched legacy cheapened by ambition. And in that chaos, the weight of his vow became heavier. The struggle within him grew a prince caught between duty to his father's reign and a deeper obligation to a woman whose influence still lingered in his every decision. For William, the Queen Mother wasn't just family. She was the conscience of the crown. And that conscience had been whispering to him for years. Sources close to the palace say the internal debate reached its breaking point in recent months. The pressure to remain neutral was suffocating. Charles, ever the traditionalist, urged caution. Camilla, emboldened by growing influence, insisted that the future be shaped through blended bloodlines. But William had already made his choice. And in one final private conversation with Charlotte, he laid bare the burden he had carried alone. He told her about the Queen Mother, not in the way history books described her, but as a woman who believed in her family more than her throne. He told her what she meant to him, and what Charlotte now meant to that legacy. The day the announcement was made, palace staff described a chill in the air. William's words were measured, deliberate, and unwavering. He didn't ask for approval. He didn't consult with his father or stepmother. He simply confirmed what many had long suspected, that Princess Charlotte would inherit the Queen Mother's legacy, not as a symbol, but as a continuation. With that single act, William dismantled decades of unspoken hierarchy and realigned the future of the monarchy around grace, not lineage. The fallout was immediate. While the public embraced the move with overwhelming support, the family itself was caught off guard. William's loyalty had always been quiet, but this time it roared. And with the vow fulfilled, everything that had been suppressed, every tension, every rivalry, was suddenly exposed under the harsh glare of consequence. But with the announcement made, the royal family was thrown into chaos, and no one was more stunned or furious than Camilla herself. Witnesses claim Camilla erupted after William's statement, reportedly shouting, "This was supposed to be my legacy!" For a woman who climbed every rung to claim her place beside the crown, watching it slip into Charlotte's hands was the ultimate betrayal. The moment William confirmed Charlotte as the heir to the Queen Mother's legacy, Camilla's carefully constructed sense of power began to fracture. Insiders say she was blindsided, having believed that the legacy conversation would either remain buried or at the very least open for compromise. But when the news broke, it wasn't simply a matter of disappointment. It was rage. In a private corridor of Clarence's house, she allegedly exploded in front of stunned aides, her voice echoing with fury and disbelief. The woman who had fought tooth and nail for acceptance was now being publicly cast aside in favor of a child, and not just any child, but Catherine's daughter. Palace aides were instantly caught in a dangerous crossfire. Some, long loyal to Camilla, were unsure whether to comfort or retreat. Others looked to Charles for guidance, but the king's silence only deepened the chaos. According to one royal attendant, Camilla was seen storming into the king's private study, slamming the door behind her. What followed remains unconfirmed, but rumors suggest a heated exchange in which she demanded that Charles correct the narrative, only to be met with his stony refusal. For a brief, terrifying moment, It's believed Camilla threatened to withdraw from all public duties, leaving the monarchy without its queen consort. Whether it was a bluff or a genuine breakdown remains a closely guarded secret. The fallout, however, could not be contained. The media latched on immediately. Headlines speculated about division within the royal household. Old tensions resurfaced in tabloid exposés. Public opinion, already leaning in favor of Charlotte and Catherine, tilted further. Images of Charlotte at recent engagements, serene and dignified, were contrasted brutally with Camilla's alleged meltdown. The symbolism was impossible to ignore. Grace under fire versus a queen consumed by the loss of influence. Behind palace walls, Camilla's fears ran deeper than the headlines. To her, this wasn't merely about legacy, it was about erasure. She had spent years climbing from the shadows of scandal, clawing her way into public respectability. But with one announcement, she felt her entire journey rewritten. The Queen Mother's legacy, which Camilla perhaps hoped to shape or even share, had been wrenched from her grasp and handed to a girl barely into adolescence. And the woman behind that transfer, Catherine, had done so without ever raising her voice. Charles, torn between royal stability and marital loyalty, is said to have walked a fine line in the days that followed. While he urged calm and unity, he reportedly refused to intervene, saying only, "What's done is done." To Camilla, those words were a quiet betrayal. To William, they were the first sign that the crown would not interfere. And to the public, they signaled that a royal shift was not only underway, but irreversible. Yet while Camilla unraveled, another royal figure had been quietly watching and preparing to speak. Known for her steely silence, Princess Anne finally broke ranks, reportedly uttering 6 words that silenced an entire room. Charlotte deserves the crown of grace. With that, she affirmed what many feared and what others celebrated. For decades, Princess Anne had been the monarchy's unwavering constant, a woman of discipline, duty, and deliberate restraint. She rarely involved herself in public disputes or private squabbles, choosing instead to protect the institution from behind a shield of quiet dignity. But when Camilla's campaign to claim the Queen Mother's symbolic legacy reached fever pitch, and when Charlotte was thrust into the eye of the storm, Anne stepped forward, not as a sister or aunt, but as a guardian of royal memory. Her loyalty to the Queen Mother was forged not through sentiment, but through shared understanding. Anne had spent her youth observing the matriarch's way of wielding power with precision, never flair. And in Charlotte, she saw a reflection of that same spirit, unshaped by ego, untouched by entitlement. Behind closed doors, a high-level planning meeting erupted into thinly veiled chaos. Camilla's aides had proposed a public commemoration tying her family to a Queen Mother-themed foundation, an act that would have rewritten history in subtle but powerful ways. But before the proposal could even be reviewed, Anne, who had remained silent for most of the sessions, spoke. She didn't argue, she didn't negotiate. She simply said, "Charlotte deserves the crown of grace," and shut the binder. The room, filled with advisors, froze. That moment marked the end of the discussion and the beginning of a new alignment. It became clear to everyone present that Anne had made her choice. She would not protect Camilla's position at the cost of erasing what her mother, the Queen Mother, had built. And it wasn't just words. Anne began actively influencing how future ceremonial roles would be distributed. Sources claim she quietly blocked a recommendation to include Camilla's grandchildren in a royal chapel event, instead positioning Charlotte front and center for a private wreath-laying ceremony honoring the Queen Mother's wartime service. This wasn't revenge, it was restoration. The monarchy, through Anne's hand, was beginning to correct its course. In a rare moment of emotion, Anne reportedly visited Charlotte under the pretense of reviewing upcoming protocols. But what happened during that meeting left staff stunned. Anne, normally so composed, handed Charlotte a velvet pouch said to contain a brooch once worn exclusively by the Queen Mother during key state occasions. "She would have wanted you to have this," Anne whispered before leaving the room. The symbolism was seismic. That small act carried centuries of meaning and decades of withheld emotion. And Charlotte, who had remained silent through the storm, finally felt the full weight of what she had been chosen to carry. The media quickly picked up on Anne's involvement. Public perception shifted again. The so-called Charlotte choice was no longer seen as just William's defiant move or Catherine's maternal stand, it had become royal doctrine. And Anne, the monarchy's sharpest tactician, had thrown her full weight behind it. With her blessing, what was once contested became inevitable. The Queen Mother's legacy was no longer under siege. It had been secured, passed through silent hands, and anchored in a child who had yet to speak a word about it publicly. The tides were turning fast, but nothing prepared the public for what was discovered next, a hidden vault that redefined everything. Beneath layers of dust and royal secrecy, an item long considered missing was recovered, a token from the Queen Mother that, by her own hand, was meant for Charlotte. The legacy wasn't a jewel or a title, it was a mission, a map for the future of the monarchy. The discovery came by accident, or so the story goes. In the process of reorganizing part of the royal archives at Windsor, a staff member unearthed a sealed wooden box marked with the Queen Mother's initials, her personal crest etched in gold beneath the seal. It was unlike anything found before. Its placement, its preservation, and its deliberate concealment all suggested intent. The seal was intact, untouched since the day it was placed there. When the contents were finally examined under the tightest circle of trust, what lay inside sent ripples through the palace corridors. No crown, no tiara, but something far more powerful: handwritten letters, aged photographs, and a delicate crest pin worn only once by the Queen Mother in a post-war portrait that had never been released to the public. Among the documents was a letter short, precise, and profound, to be given to the child who mirrors grace when grace is no longer taught. She will not ask for this. She will deserve it in silence. It wasn't signed with a title, only her birth name, Elizabeth Bowes Lyon. That single note obliterated all ambiguity. This was no vague sentiment. This was instruction. And with it, everything shifted again. Charlotte wasn't being granted something by her family. She had already been chosen by history itself. Catherine was reportedly the first to read the letter. Those present say she broke down, not from pride, but from the weight of it, all the years spent shielding Charlotte from internal politics, the whispers, the subtle threats, the silent war fought behind closed doors. It had all led to this. And the confirmation, the validation, arrived not in speeches or ceremonies, but in ink and intention, buried deep in time. In that moment, Catherine knew the path ahead wouldn't be easier, it would be heavier. But now, it was undeniable. Charlotte's reaction when told was described as stillness. Not confusion, not fear, but a quiet knowing. Perhaps it was the years of watching her mother navigate storms with elegance. Perhaps it was something deeper, an inheritance that transcended names and titles. What matters is that she didn't shrink. In the days that followed, her public demeanor shifted. There was no announcement, no fanfare, but something in the way she stood at her next appearance, shoulders straighter, eyes more anchored, made it clear. She understood. The public, upon learning of the vault's contents, responded with unexpected reverence. For a family often plagued by division and scandal, this revelation brought a rare collective pause. Media outlets framed Charlotte not as a royal child, but as the dawning face of the monarchy's soul. Commentators described her as a rebirth of tradition without the weight of Iggy. Oh, a figure not of the moment, but of meaning. The Queen Mother's foresight had bridged generations, and her message, once hidden in dust, now defined the future. It was a revelation that should have brought peace, a closing of a chapter. But the monarchy does not sleep. And legacy, once challenged, invites retaliation. Because while Catherine and Charlotte embraced this newfound truth, others saw only threat and began sharpening their response. But even in this moment of revelation, danger loomed as whispers of revenge began echoing through the palace halls. Sources close to Camilla hint she may not be done yet. In the shadows of Charlotte's ascension, a last move is rumoured to be unfolding, one that could undermine everything William, Catherine, and the Queen Mother built. Will Charlotte rise beyond legacy, or be the spark that ignites a new royal war? Camilla, though rattled by the succession of symbolism toward Charlotte, is far from retreating. Whispers from inside the palace suggest a resurgence, one cloaked in public relations maneuvers and quiet legal murmurs. Already, several of her closest aides are reportedly in discreet contact with influential media outlets, attempting to reshape the narrative. According to one insider, Camilla is determined to cast the recent revelations not as a coronation of destiny, but as an orchestrated campaign fueled by personal ambition. Leaks have begun appearing in sympathetic publications, subtly questioning the timing, authenticity, and even the integrity of the Queen Mother's sealed letter. It's a deliberate strategy, one aimed at planting doubt without issuing direct confrontation. But the real danger may lie in a brewing legal challenge. Multiple sources confirm that advisors within Camilla's camp have begun examining the legal framework surrounding royal archives. Their aim to argue that the discovered documents, while emotionally powerful, lack constitutional standing. If pursued, such a maneuver could force the monarchy into a public debate over legacy, threatening to drag the entire institution into a courtroom of public opinion. And, at the center of it all, would be Charlotte, barely old enough to understand the gravity of what's unfolding, yet old enough to carry its burden. Meanwhile, palace aides have reported a chilling shift in internal communication. Certain staff aligned with Camilla are said to be quietly circulating concerns about Charlotte's readiness. Phrases like too young, too groomed, and unproven have started appearing in private memos. These aren't random comments, they're seeds. And if allowed to take root, they could grow into a fully formed campaign to delegitimize her role before it even begins. William, aware of the rising tension, has begun reinforcing his inner circle. Crisis advisors, media strategists, and family loyalists have all been placed on high alert. What was once a symbolic passing of the torch has turned into a battle for narrative control. Catherine, never one to posture publicly, has made her position clear behind palace doors. According to one senior aide, she looked Charles in the eye and said, "I will protect her legacy with everything I have." It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. And for those who know Catherine's quiet power, it was the loudest statement she could have made. The Queen Mother's legacy is no longer just a memory. It's living, breathing, and standing in the form of a young girl the public now watches with awe. In an unexpected moment that caught both supporters and skeptics off guard, Charlotte broke her silence during a small gathering with press, saying only, "I will carry this with honor." It wasn't scripted. It wasn't coached, but it echoed with the clarity of someone far older than her years. In that moment, all the noise faded, and what remained was a single, unshakable truth. Charlotte was not just chosen, she had accepted. The Queen Mother's legacy has found its heir, but with shadows creeping closer, the battle for the soul of the monarchy has only just begun. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.